Hey guys, welcome back to Alienation, or if you're new here, hi, hello, my name is Megan, and every single Sunday I sit down and talk about some form of weird and not so wonderful topic that really interests me. And today I have a very confusing topic. So, I know what I'm talking about today, obviously, but at the same time, well, I don't really have a fucking clue as to what I'm talking about, and I don't really know how to address this topic introduction. It's not a true crime case, or is it? No, it's not. It can't be. Is it a missing persons case? Kind of. Is it a story? Is it a myth? Is it a legend? It's completely baffling. That's all I can really tell you. So I'm going to say a conspiracy theory. That's what I'm going to say. I'm going to say we're going to be talking about a conspiracy theory today, or a theory, or a myth, or a legend. It kind of falls into that umbrella category, but it is just going to be a minisode today. It's going to be a shorter episode because there's not much to go off when it comes to this topic. There is not that much I can talk about. So today I'm going to be chatting about the man from Taured. I think it's Taured, but Taured just comes out a bit more natural to me, so whatever comes out of my mouth, we're going to go with. But if you've not heard of this story, it is a little bit baffling. It's a little bit confusing. I've been interested in this for the longest time. I can't remember when I first came across this, so I knew I wanted to cover it at some point on Alienation, and today's the day. So let's get into it. Here we go. So this event basically took place in Japan, and it was sometime in July in 1954, and it was summertime. It was very hot. I want to say Haneda. I'm going to say Haneda, and if that is wrong, I am so sorry, but this takes place at Haneda Airport. This is in Tokyo in Japan, and as expected at any form of airport, well, not currently right now, I don't even know if there's many flights going and coming right now because of the pandemic, but during the time, a lot of flights were coming and going, and a specific flight from Europe had arrived at this airport. This really pisses me off the same way a lot of people in the UK get annoyed when Europe comes up, simply because when people say, oh, Europe's huge. Europe is absolutely massive. So when people say, oh, I'm going traveling to Europe is huge. There are so many countries in Europe. So the fact that it doesn't specify where in Europe really triggers me. It makes me so angry. If people are booking a holiday to England or the UK and they're like, oh, I'm going to Europe. No, where in Europe, hun? Where? Sorry for that little tangent there, but basically, a flight from Europe, as vague as that is, had arrived at Haneda. And just like normal, the passengers were getting off, including our main man, who we're going to be talking about today. We don't know too much about him. Unfortunately, we don't know his name. All we know roughly is that he was a Caucasian man. He apparently had dark hair and a beard, and he was smartly dressed, kind of in like a business suit, nothing too bizarre. So he had stepped off this plane from this random European country. So like normal, when you get off an aeroplane, you have to go through airport security. I presume a lot of people know what this entails of, but anyway, just very quickly, usually you have to hand over your passport. Sometimes they ask you questions like, oh, business or pleasure, what are you here for? Are you on holiday? They just sort of chat to you, check your ID, make sure you're not up to any dodgy business. So our main man, I need to give him I'm not going to give him a name, that'd just be weird. I'm going to call him our main man. He handed over his passport, and he told the person that he handed his passport over to that he was there for business. So he basically told the officials that he'd been to Japan multiple times, specifically 3 times in that year alone. And surprisingly, he was very well versed in many languages. He spoke some Japanese quite well. He did have a French accent, so he spoke French. Apparently he just spoke a few different languages, and he did it quite well. So everything was normal. The officials took the passport after chatting with him, and they took a look at it. The passport kind of appeared normal. It was worn, so it had signs of use, and flicking through it, the official noticed that it was completely filled with stamps. So sort of proving that this guy was a very well-travelled man. Do they still do that? Do they still stamp passports? It's been a while since I've been away. I remember from when I was younger, most countries you go to, you get like a little stamp, sort of like, you've been here, like an official country stamp. So I don't know if they still do that. If they do, let me know. But anyway, this guy had a passport full of stamps from all over the world. And like he mentioned that he'd been to Japan 3 times already that year, there was proof of that. There was 3 stamps from Japan already, and he was about to get his 4th. However, the official then noticed that the passport was from a country he did not recognise. It was from the country Taured. And he was like, I'm sorry, where? There are so many countries, so many countries. I probably don't even know that many myself, I'm not gonna lie. So there'd be a lot that would slip my mind, but obviously it's airport security, it's their job. They're gonna know most countries. So this one seemed to confuse the official. He was like, yo, I don't recognize this. There is something not quite right here. Where the fuck is Taured? As far as I'm aware, Taured doesn't exist. So the official was very concerned because unfortunately some bad things do obviously happen. We just live in a shit world. There's terrorist attacks, all sorts of smugglers, people seeking asylum. So the security is obviously there for a reason. So he was getting a little bit confused and he basically just asked him again, I'm sorry, where are you from and whereabouts is it? And our main man was like, I'm from Taured, dude. Like, come on, just stamp my passport and let me through. And again, he was like, I don't know where this is. We don't know where Taured is. Where are you from? And what are you in Japan for? So the guy again explained that he was there for business. He pulled out all of his traveller's checks. He had a huge range of currency from a various amount of countries, kind of proving the fact that he was a well-travelled man. He also had documentation for the company that he worked for, but they still had no idea as to where this country was. So he was kind of taken into custody at this point. It is an airport. It's obviously not a jail. So I think he was taken to an office that was somewhere in the airport because they wanted to get to the bottom of this. They couldn't just let a random guy from a country that apparently doesn't exist into their own country, even though he kind of already was in the country, but you get the point. His clothes seemed normal. He was wearing a suit. His wallet was normal. His behaviour was normal. Everything seemed fine and normal, apart from the fact that Taured didn't exist. However, this guy was adamant that Taured existed, and that was exactly where he had just come from. So officials said, okay, that's fine. Look, here's a map. I want you to point out your country to us. Tell us where exactly you came from. You know, just in case they'd made a mistake. It was a very small country, you know, just in case. Prove to us where you are from. So confidently, the man straight away points exactly to where he believes his country is. He's basically like, right there, that's my country. That is where I live. However, the officials, the airport police of some sort, I don't really know, immigration, I'm not too sure who is involved at this point, but the people questioning him said, that's not Taured, that's Andorra. I believe it's pronounced Principality of Andorra. We're going to go with Andorra. And this is a tiny, tiny little country in between the borders of France and Spain. And obviously the guy was like, no, that's my country, that's Taured. So after inspecting the map himself closer, he realised Taured doesn't exist there. It's not on the map. The officials were right, it is Andorra. So he's completely baffled, he's very confused, he starts getting frustrated, and he claims that his country's been there for over 1,000 years. How can it just suddenly disappear off the map? But the guy has all of his documents, like I said. He had the name of his bank, so all of his bank cards and details and the money that he's brought. He also could tell the capital of Taured, which is where he claimed he got his passport from. There was so much that he knew about this country. Obviously, it was his home country. So he was just sort of reeling off what he could, getting more and more confused over the fact that these people didn't know Taured existed. He also explained that he had reservations at a hotel along with a meeting booked with a business. So the name of this business and the name of this hotel that he reeled off, they both did exist. They both were there in Japan. He said he'd been there multiple times, and that was why he was here again. He was there for business. He was there to do his job. He said he'd been travelling to Japan for the past 5 years, multiple times over and over again, and this had never happened before. But again, the officials just couldn't find any information on Taured. They were like, we cannot find it. Where the hell is this country? Because it's definitely not where you said it was. So they chose to contact the hotel, and it turns out they had no idea who this man was. They had no reservation under his name, no matter how adamant this guy was. And even the business he was supposed to be meeting with had no idea as to who he was. And they too didn't have a meeting booked with him. So he was like, well, what the fuck do I do? I've just come from my country like I have every other time. And the officials were like, well, what the fuck do we do? We can't just let you in. So what happened next? He obviously was getting exceedingly frustrated, and he demanded to speak to government officials. And in the meantime, he was actually moved from the airport to a hotel. He was there a long time, so the most they could do, I suppose, was put him up in a hotel somewhere a bit comfier for him and somewhere they could keep an eye on him. So 2 immigration officers were placed outside the door, kind of on guard, because he wasn't, well, he kind of was a prisoner, let's be serious. He wasn't technically under arrest, but he was in custody. He wasn't going anywhere. And that was basically going to be the setup until a decision was made, until they could get hold of whatever government official they could and just figure out what the hell was going on. So they'd sort of confiscated his stuff, not sort of taking it off him, but they took all of his documents, they had his passport, just to sort of figure out where this place was, it was evidence of some sort. So they had all that apparently locked away in an office at the airport still, or it might have been locked away at the hotel, but it was separate from him from what I believe. So it was a long night. They let him go to sleep. Like I said, there was 2 guards on the clock constantly outside of his hotel room. So they thought, let's call it a night. People go to sleep. We'll sort this out in the morning. We'll start questioning him again. So the next day, the officials returned to the hotel, spoke to the guards. They said there's nothing really to say. He's still in there. So when they opened the door, they found the hotel room empty. He was gone. He'd just vanished. So they obviously searched the hotel room. It was a very tall building, I believe, and he was quite high up. I don't know if there was a balcony, but from what I'm aware, if he was to have chosen to have gone out the window, he would not have survived it in the slightest. He couldn't have got out via the window without dying. Obviously, there would be evidence of him falling, if that makes sense. So where the hell had he gone? He just vanished. He hadn't left because there was security outside. Neither of them had accidentally let him slip out. He'd just gone. So they decided to turn up back to his belongings, back to all of his passports and documents to sort of see, like, how does this make sense? Where's this guy gone? We need to figure this out. And unfortunately, all of those documentations, including his passport, had vanished too. There was no sign of them. They hadn't been stolen. No one had been in there to take them. They had just disappeared. And that is pretty much the very confusing, very short story of the man from Taured. It is exceptionally weird, but I'm going to just give you my 2 cents on it, my thoughts, because it is exceptionally baffling. So this apparently took place in 1954 when this went down. So it wasn't that long ago, so technology was a thing, but at the same time, not everything was advanced. So my question is, in 1954, did they have the technology to forge passports that well? I get that it obviously was a country that didn't exist, but the rest of it seemed exceedingly legit. Did they have the technology to then fake all of his other documents? So the bank details, the check-in books, all things like that. How would he have had all those things linked back to this country that apparently didn't exist? So next, sure, he could have just yeeted himself out the window, don't get me wrong, but like I said, that was his only way out. And if that was his only way out, there would have been a body. But if he'd gone out that way, how did all of his stuff go as well? Did he apparently have an inside person taking his stuff as well? And next, how the hell would he have got on the plane in the first place? Because you have to go through airport security on both sides. Surely, as he got on the plane, they would have been like, oh, I see you're going to Japan, but you have a passport here from a country we don't know. But then again, clearly he was coming from Taured maybe, and Taured doesn't exist. So yeah, I don't know. But either way, he clearly got off a plane. So how did he get on the plane in the first place? So if he didn't fly from Taured, which European country did he fly from? I'd like to know that. So if this guy was hiding something, why would he ask to contact the government officials? Why would he be so adamant and so demanding to have authorities get involved? Because they're like the top people. So if you were into some dodgy business, surely you wouldn't then be asking for government officials to get involved. So it can't really have been dodgy business. So next, this is what baffled me a little bit. He did not stutter or hesitate in the slightest when it came to pointing out his country. Straight away, he knew how it was. The same way, I'm not exactly the brightest of bulbs, but at the same time, if someone handed me a map and was like, point out your country, I'd be like, there, bitch. Most people know where they live, where their country is on a map. And next, how did he get stamps on his passport? Again, did they have the technology to forge and fake every one of these stamps, all in different colours from all these different countries? Makes no sense. So obviously, we live in a day and age where the internet is a very popular thing. So everyone on the internet has their own opinions, has their own theories, because like I said, this is kind of like a conspiracy theory. So there are a few theories. I'm going to very quickly run through some of them and you'll have to let me know your thoughts. So basically, the first theory is that one, he was a fraud. So either he was into some dodgy business and he was basically using a fraudulent passport. It seemed pretty legit, so I think he was trying to, like, I don't know, maybe slip on through and hope no one would notice. He could be a smuggler, he could be someone claiming asylum, which is very, very possible. But then again, how in the hell did he just disappear along with all of his documents? I can kind of understand that these things do happen, but if he was just a bit dodgy or whatever, how did he then just disappear? It makes no sense. They could have got rid of him. They could have figured out he was dodgy and just killed him. Another theory there. So next there was the theory that he was possibly mentally deranged. I don't really like that. I think it's quite derogatory. Either way, another theory is that he was mentally ill. And apparently any sane individual choosing to put themselves at that much risk of using a fake passport is clearly mentally ill. So that's a theory. You can take that with a pinch of salt or like take what you want from that. I think that's a very weird theory. But apparently that theory does explain, I say in air quotations, the fact that the passport is fake, but it also explains the man's behaviour and how he's lying, but he could also believe those lies. Like he could potentially believe he's from a country that doesn't exist. But then again, if that was true, how was he able to travel all the way around the world and get all these different stamps and not get noticed? You know, like not get caught? Again, like I said, it's not a theory I would probably get behind. So next, this one is interesting, but basically there is a theory that Taured actually does exist. That it is there, it is somewhere on the country, somewhere around where the guy had pointed, but apparently it's just a secret country, or it's just a hidden country. Well, hidden to an extent, 'cause obviously this guy's walking around with a passport from there. And apparently this theory could explain as to why he was lying about while he was in the country and lying about his job, because apparently his job wasn't real and didn't exist, and it might have been to hide his other purpose as to why he was there. But again, how would no one have picked up on it before? It makes no sense. So this kind of leads on to the next theory, and that is that this guy, our main man, is actually a spy. He's a government agent, which is why he was asking for government officials. He's like, yo, call my boss. They'll know what to do. A lot of people believe that they'd given him legit looking documentations in hopes that he could just sort of slip through the cracks and that no one would notice. They didn't really want to give away his real or true identity, so they gave him fake documentations. But then again, if he was a spy, surely they would have just given him like a fake passport, but for a real country. Like, here's my Canadian passport. Not, here's my fake country passport. That makes no sense. Anyway, the next theory, I don't want to say this is the theory I believe because it's very, very far-fetched, but it's kind of a theory that would make sense if it was possible and if it was real. I'm not saying it's not real. I'm not saying it is real, but this would kind of make sense if it is possible. So a main theory is that basically Taured happens to be in another universe or another dimension, and our main man somehow managed to slip through the dimensions, passed through the parallel universes, I don't really know, and he somehow ended up at Haneda Airport in our dimension. So he got on a plane in his universe and somehow jumped through time and space, dimensions, whatever, and ended up here in our shit show of a world. So that is kind of one of the main theories. And then somehow after being taken into the custody and in the hotel, he then somehow managed to jump back to his dimension. I don't really know. It would explain him disappearing and just sort of appearing from a place that doesn't exist. You know what I mean? But at the same time, it's very far-fetched. Oh, but random theory. He could also be a time traveller. So maybe from a time where Taured is a country, really far in the future maybe. I don't know, but that's another theory maybe. I'm just waffling. But then we have the final theory, and that is basically that this is just an elaborate internet hoax. That this is all bullshit. It's just a story passed down from time to time. This is probably the most possible one. So to conclude, very bizarre. There is not much to go off in the slightest, because from what I'm aware, there is no solid facts, no solid proof, no solid evidence, because surely if this was real, there would be some form of documentation. Like if you work in the authorities, there is so much paperwork, it's a ball ache. So there would be some form of paperwork trail to this. Well, there might be. It might be hidden by the government. We don't really know. I don't really know, because there isn't no solid proof for me to find. There isn't much to go off. It's very, very bizarre. From what I'm aware, I believe there is some form of true real life case of a man who did actually arrive at an airport and he was travelling, and he said he was from a country that apparently didn't exist. He named a country that wasn't real. I'm not going to get into that because I haven't looked into it too much myself. I don't think this guy just disappeared overnight though, and I'm pretty sure there is 2 books where this story just randomly appears in, but again, we don't know where they've got their evidence from. So yeah, it is very bizarre. This story just sort of appeared and no one really knows where from. But yeah, that is the man from Taured. So what are your thoughts? You have to let me know. Is it just fucking bullshit, or is there some form of weird fact to this? Is it possible? If it is real, let's just for argument's sake say it is true, it did happen. What are your theories? How do you think he disappeared? Where's Taured? Like, was he just ill? Did he not really know what was going on? Let me know. How confusing must that be? Imagine, put yourself into that guy's shoes for a second. You've hopped on another business flight like you've done 3 times this year to Japan alone, and you get there and they're like, yo, your country doesn't exist. Who are you? Where are you from? You're fucking lying. You would be so confused. That was today's little minisode. I don't want to say I'd like to believe, but I think if this was a real thing, part of me thinks maybe the whole universe jumping kind of makes sense, but then that obviously means that parallel universes would have to exist and all that jazz. But again, the more realistic part of me is saying that this is just absolute bullshit. I don't really know. It's just a weird one. I wanted to talk about it. If you haven't heard of this, then great. But thank you so much for joining me this week. If you are watching on YouTube, thank you so much for watching. Please give it a massive thumbs up. Leave me a comment down below and subscribe if you are not. And if you are listening on podcast streaming services, thank you so much. Please rate, review, share everything you can to help spread the word. And I will catch you guys in my next one. Bye!